Gacheru, who is a counseling psychologist.
I did that too.
So it's still new here. All right, so let's just get right into it. I mean, we talk about addictions, and we know there's a lot of things that actually lead to addictions. But let's start by first understanding, when you say addictions, what exactly are we talking about? What is addiction?
So when you talk about addictions, number one, I need to clarify something first. Addiction is not only about substances like drugs and alcohol, because normally people think those are the only addictive things. So addiction can also be behavioral, and there are so many behaviors that are addictive. Things like shopping, things like gambling, you know, working. Some people work too much. So we are going to be talking about all those. And so how do you define addiction? Addiction is a strong or compulsive force, or, you know, when you're doing something too much and you can't stop it, and there are consequences, but you're not even noticing it. Like the way I've talked about gambling. You know, when you're gambling too much, it means that you're using too much of your finances, but you're not noticing. Even when you lose, I'm sure you've heard people say, nilipeana tao,
lakini siwezi
acha
hata.
ikurudi. So that is what addiction is. It's a compulsive condition where you're something that you're not able to control.
Right. You're saying that when you're doing something too much and you're not even realizing, you know, can someone say that it's just because I love it? Then at what point does it actually become an addiction? And is there a difference between addiction and dependence to something?
Yes. Well, addiction is dependence. So there is a difference between just loving something and addiction. Because when you just love something, it means you don't do it like all the time, January to January,
there's some limits
every day.
to
Exactly.
it.
But then when it comes to addiction, this thing controls you. You want to stop, but you can't. Just it's the same thing with like people who abuse alcohol. We've had them so many times. They will say, "Aki mimi nataka kuacha, I want to stop,
but sijui niache aje."
They will even go to church, wataekelewa mikono, waokoke, and then unfortunately after a week they will go back to the same behavior. It's because addiction is an illness. It is a mental illness. Especially addiction related to substance abuse. It really affects your mind, and the only way you can break out of it is seeking professional help.
That's why you're here anyway, because you're a professional. But we'll come to that mental bit in just a short while. You mentioned something earlier on, that is substance and behavioral. And anytime we talk about addiction, we always think alcohol, but you actually have categories of this differentiated into two different things. We have the substance and we have the behavioral. So I'd like you to explain to us what substance is as you give us some examples of it, and what behavioral is as you give us some examples of it.
Thank you very much. I really love clarifying this. Because there's always this, you know, out there, what people think is the right thing, they always conclude it's the right thing, you know. If I say I am an addict, you won't even ask me what are you addicted to.
Wewe ni pombe tu.
You know. So when it comes to substances, it means that you are dependent on chemicals. Anything that alters your mood, you know, anything that goes to your brain and alters your mood. Because substances like drugs and alcohol, what they do, they go straight away to your brain, and then they alter how your neurotransmitters work, and so that is how you experience that high. You know. But then when it comes to the other form of addiction, that is behavioral addiction. That is when you're addicted to doing some things. Some people are addicted to masturbation, sex, pornography, you know.
That falls under behavioral.
Yes, that falls under behavioral. Because it's not going to your brain, as in it's not altering your mood, you're not putting it into your body, right? It's something you're doing. you're enacting.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. At least now we know there's a difference between substance and behavioral. And when we talk about addictions, it's not just necessarily a team. There are actually other forms of addictions.
Yes.
Of all this that we're talking about, whether substance, behavioral, regardless, which one is the most common form of addiction that is really abused so much that also for you as a practicing professional psychologist that you've actually encountered even with your patients?
From the behavioral category?
Just in general.
In general. Okay, of course, substance addiction is more common. It's the most common because then we have so many rehabilitation centers in, say, Nairobi alone. And all of them, 90% of the people there have substance addiction, right? Very few people will go to rehab because they have sex addiction or because they have gambling addiction. It's uncommon, you know? But then also when we come to behavioral, I would say social media, gambling, shopping.
Shopping is actually an addiction.
Shopping is an addiction.
It's not just a hobby. People say, it's my hobby. I love to shop.
Yeah. Some people have started coming out about it and saying they are actually addicted because they are trying to stop, but they can't. You find that anytime your salary comes in, the first thing you do, Jumia, you know? And it's so addictive. Another addiction that is very common is... Sorry, I don't know, forgot.
But all right, fine. You talked about that sex addiction and you just tried to compare it to the fact that most form of addictions are actually the substance kind of addictions. So even when you talk about the behavioral and specifically the sex one, is it that people just don't talk about it, yet it's actually one of those commonly abused form of addictions, or is just that it does not fall under the category of most commonly forms of addictions that are actually abused?
Well, I would like to say it's because people don't like talking about
Don't talk about
because
it.
they are in denial.
Okay.
You know, how can I be addicted to sex? You know, and if I tell people that I am addicted to sex, they'll judge me, you know. They'll judge me more than they would judge someone who is addicted to alcohol because, well, there are so many people who are addicted to it, you know. So there's that social stigma that prevents people from talking about it. But fortunately, right now people are starting to, you know, create awareness about it, and more people have started realizing that they're actually suffering from it.
And they're actually talking about it.
So, sorry, I just remembered the other addiction.
That the most commonly abused?
Yes.
All right.
It's masturbation. Because I've had so many people reach out to me about it, especially men. I think masturbation affects men more than it affects women.
Okay.
And it's because also of social stigma. I think growing up, men are not taught to love their bodies. So they are taught that only a woman is supposed to appreciate them, you know, and sexual satisfaction is supposed to come from a woman. So anytime they do it themselves, the guilt that comes with it, it's a lot, you know. And unfortunately, for people who are masturbating, then they'll have to be, most of them have to also have porn addiction. So they go hand in hand. Anytime I watch porn, I masturbate, you know. And you know, when you watch porn, that person who you're watching on the screen, you don't have to please her. She's just there to please you, you know. And then there are varieties of everything that you want to see, you know. So the minute you meet with a woman, you're not able to stay in the present moment because you're used to fantasizing from whatever you see from the screen. So you find it easier to, you know, look at the screen, finish up, and go wherever you're going. And with time, it becomes a habit, and then with time, it becomes a disease of addiction.
Well, it becomes actually a disease of addictions. And it looks like when it comes to men, this is actually one of those most prevalent form of addictions. From your practice as a counseling psychologist, what are some of the steps that you perhaps take men through? Because the way you've mentioned is that you actually get to hear this more from men as opposed to women. So how do you take them through then in terms of how they can perhaps get to stop it? Because you've mentioned it's actually not just an habit as it forms, it gets to become a disease.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much for that question. Well, normally when a client comes in for counseling, for whatever reason, we normally take them through screening first to, establish what exactly is going on. Like, I will not send you to a rehab if I haven't screened you and actually assess that you have an addiction problem, So we will do an assessment first for sex addiction or masturbation, and then we see the extent to which it has gone, because sometimes you might also be paranoid about it. Maybe you did it once or twice and then you are like, wow, I'm addicted, because it happens. So after that, we do an assessment. An assessment is where you take the information of the client, you get to know their background.
Just to interject a bit, this screening involves, is it a conversation you have with the client?
No, okay, a screening is like a test.
All right.
Yes, it's a test where I ask you questions.
As you tick
As somewhere. I tick, yeah. It's
very important to clarify what exactly you're talking about.
Yes. So during screening, we use specific tools for measuring exactly what it is I'm screening you for. Okay. So maybe I'll ask you maybe how many times do you do it, where do you do it, what do you think are your triggers. I'll ask you such questions, and then at the end of it, I will score and get to know where you stand, Yeah, and then now I do an assessment. I get to know your background, because some people develop these behaviors because of different, as in everyone develops different behaviors because of different reasons.
And sometimes actually tied to background.
Exactly.
And your environment.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So sometimes you might find maybe someone went through sexual assault. And so they don't feel confident about doing it with someone else. They would rather do it alone. Sometimes they have low self-esteem, all these things. Maybe they started watching porn when they were too young and they became addicted to it. They didn't have anyone to tell them to stop. Yeah, so reasons are so many. And I would like to urge anyone who is going through this to assess themselves, get to know the root of this. By knowing the root of it, you're able to put a finger on what exactly is going on. Because masturbation or whatever it is you're addicted to, that is not the problem. The problem is what you're running away from.
So it means like there's some other underlying factors maybe not talked about.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, let's come to social media, because I tend to feel, maybe you can tell us from a professional perspective, is that it is slowly becoming one of those really commonly abused form of addictions that people don't even know it's actually an addiction, to a point that someone can ask you, can you stay away from your phone for one day, and they go like, nikiacha simu kwa nyumba, I'd rather go back and pick it. Just a single day. Someone cannot. What is the rationale? I mean, what is the logic? Because tech is supposed to come and help us. This is a form of technology.
True.
But it's slowly becoming a very bad habit.
Yeah. Okay. So, I hope these social media platforms will not sue me for saying this, but
this is your moment. Tell me.
All this, social media is it's a product. Facebook is a product. Instagram is a product. And whoever designed it so that it would be bought, And they designed it in a way that it will hook your mind. Is that the right word? Hooking you into I can't stop. So that's every time now I'll keep buying internet bundles and giving them money. So all these social media platforms are designed to hook your dopamine. So dopamine is that hormone inside our brain that is produced anytime you have the anticipation for a good feeling. It's responsible for all addictions, actually, because addiction is the result of, anticipating for something. When you go into your Instagram account and then you see some people dancing to some, these challenges, and you're like, hey, I would like to try that. maybe people will start liking my TikTok. You see, you're already anticipating for something. You're anticipating for a good feeling, you know, and you want to see what are people wearing. If I wear this, how will I look, you know? Maybe it will increase my followers, maybe it will increase my likes, you know. So it's because of your dopamine. And dopamine is good and it's bad, but mostly I would say it's bad. Because then it's responsible for your addictions. If you're not able to control your dopamine, it controls you. Because once it is produced, it is very intoxicating. The minute you go into social media, you see Kim Kardashian, what? That waste.
And you feel, why not?
Why not? You know?
We actually having this conversation about addictions, and my guest, Maureen Gacheru, is just helping us understand, especially from a professional perspective and a professional's point of view, what exactly addictions is all about, and for you even as a Kenyan, how you can deal with this addiction. And also, we just want to tie down to mental health, or if you may, mental disorders. When we talk about depression, anxiety, do this form of addictions actually lead to what we call mental health, or even as you have conversations surrounding mental health as a whole or mental disorders, where exactly do they stem from? Do they stem from these addictions? Do they just come from the fact that I just don't feel okay? Where exactly do they come from? And can we actually tie addictions to mental health? Yeah,
definitely. And from my point of view, I would say mental health issues cause addiction, not the other way around.
So it's not the other way around?
Yes, from my point of view. Maybe other psychologists have a different view. Because I believe people engage in certain behaviors because they're running away from something.
Okay.
If I feel depressed, I will turn to alcohol so that I feel happy.
Is this what you are calling the underlying issues not talked about? Underlying factors?
Yes, very good.
Right.
If I'm feeling anxious about maybe approaching a girl I like or a boy I like, and there's alcohol here and I believe it's going to boost my confidence, I'm definitely going to take it. And then with time, there is tolerance in my body. I can't, when I take one bottle, it doesn't give me the high I want. So I turn to 2 bottles, 3, 4, 5, you know, trying to get the same high, you know. So that is how addiction is formed. Yeah, so I believe the best way for seeing the relationship between addiction and mental health is looking at it from the point of view of what are you running from. When you go into that shopping site and make all those orders for all those dresses, what is it that you're trying to run from? It could be you're trying to boost your self-esteem, you know, because maybe you want to look like so and so, and you think that when you look like that, people will start appreciating you more, respecting you more. So it's high time you could even take a pen and a paper and try to write actually what is it that I'm trying to run away from, you know. It could be maybe you've gone through a loss. Maybe you lost someone through death, or it was a breakup, you lost a loved one, you know, and you're trying to gain control. You're trying to get back to normal. So you have to do some compulsive things so that you convince yourself that you're still okay, you know. Yeah, unfortunately, that is how addiction is formed.
All right. Yeah. At least we've tried to just unpack a bit about the addiction and trying to understand even how we can tie it to mental health. Looks like we're really out of time. We would have continued this conversation. But nonetheless, thank you so much, Maureen, for coming and talking to us, especially from a professional point of view, and trying to make us understand at least a bit about addictions and how people can also deal with that.
Okay.
And that has been our conversation on our lifestyle segment. This is where we bring this conversation to a close. Many thanks for watching. I'm Doreen Arange Okelo on behalf of the entire team. Till tomorrow, good morning.